Sparta is remembered as a city of warriors. But the evidence points to something harder. Land, law, fear, labor. And control. That contradiction is the real story. The shield mattered, but the system behind the shield mattered more. Spartan freedom for citizens depended on controlled labor beneath them. The key is to separate the public legend from the working system that made the legend possible. Sparta rose in a fertile valley. Not in an empty martial desert. That system could create discipline. But it also created permanent tension. Because control had to be maintained generation after generation. To understand Spartan power, first locate Laconia, Messenia, and the routes between them. The evidence is strongest when Sparta is treated as a social order, a political machine, and a landholding power. Not just an army. Later Greeks connected Sparta with Dorian identity. But origin stories need careful handling. Land was power because it fed citizens. Fixed status, and tied military identity to controlled labor. This keeps the story from becoming admiration alone. Because every visible strength had a cost built underneath it. Sparta had two royal houses. A rare system that made power both sacred and contested. The Council of Elders gave age, lineage, and law a central place in Spartan politics. 5 ephors could challenge kings. Showing that Sparta was not simply ruled by generals. Citizen soldiers voted, but only a narrow class counted as citizens. The HELOTS system is not background detail. It is the uncomfortable foundation that made full-time Spartan discipline possible. The famous lawgiver Lycurgus is hard to separate from later tradition. The great Retra survives as tradition about law, order, and authority. The full Spartan citizen was not just a warrior. He was supported by a controlled social system. The perioikoi lived around Sparta. Free but politically subordinate. Making goods and supporting war. The agoge trained endurance and obedience. But it also turned childhood into state policy. Helot labor made Spartan leisure and military training possible. Sparta's conquest of Messenia changed everything. Creating wealth and permanent fear. The system depended on domination. And that made rebellion a constant Spartan nightmare. Stories about the Cryptia reveal how violence, training, and terror blur in Spartan memory. The agoge trained boys into citizens through discipline, endurance, loyalty, and scarcity. Spartan equality was limited and guarded. It worked for a narrow citizen body. Not everyone living under Spartan rule. Ancient writers turned Spartan childhood into a moral theater for outsiders. The common mess made citizenship daily, social, and expensive. The famous black broth tells us as much about Spartan image as Spartan diet. Stories of iron currency show how Sparta imagined itself against luxury. Sparta's anti-luxury reputation was real in ideology, but never perfectly simple in practice. Spartan women had unusual visibility and property rights compared with many Greek cities. 2 kings did not make Sparta simple. Kings, elders, ephors, assemblies, and custom created a balanced, but tense machine. Property held by women made Spartan society more complicated than the warrior myth suggests. Spartan marriage customs became famous because they looked strange to outsiders. Spartan life was saturated with ritual, festivals, oaths, and divine obligation. The sanctuary of Artemis Orthia preserves evidence for ritual, competition, and later spectacle. Festivals like the Hyacinthia tied Sparta to memory, music, grief, and civic identity. Small votive objects give Sparta an archaeological voice beyond battle stories. Thermopylae became immortal memory. But memory can hide the wider Spartan system that produced those soldiers. Early Sparta produced art and luxury goods before its austere image hardened. The Spartan shield became a symbol. Because the line mattered more than the individual. Spartan battlefield strength came from discipline inside a larger Greek hoplite system. Red cloaks and long hair became part of the visual language of Spartan fear. Spartans marched with music, turning order into sound. Sparta built power through alliances, not conquest alone. Sparta could win wars yet struggle with the wider responsibilities victory created. Argos remained a major rival in the struggle for Peloponnesian influence. The Persian Wars turned Sparta into a symbol for Greek resistance. Thermopylae was not Sparta alone. It was a coalition stand shaped by strategy and sacrifice. The Peloponnesian War showed Spartan endurance. But victory also pulled Sparta into problems it was not built to manage. Leonidas became legend because defeat was turned into memory. The popular version often erases allies, politics, and the wider campaign. At Plataea, Greek victory required coalition warfare, logistics, and endurance. A devastating earthquake exposed Sparta's dependence on the people it oppressed. Helot revolt showed the cost of Spartan control. Sparta and Athens became rival answers to Greek power. The Peloponnesian War was a long struggle of alliances, fear, money, and exhaustion. Spartan commanders like Brasidas show a more flexible Sparta than the stereotype allows. Lysander's naval victory shows Sparta winning by using the tools it once distrusted. Messenia mattered because control over people and land was both Sparta's strength and its permanent fear. Aegospotami broke Athens at sea and changed the Greek world. Victory gave Sparta an empire it was not built to manage. Sparta's victory depended partly on Persian money. An awkward truth for the legend. Agesilaus carried Spartan ambition into Asia. But old discipline met a wider world. At Leuctra, Theban innovation shattered Spartan battlefield dominance. Epaminondas did not just defeat Sparta. He changed the map beneath it. When Messenia was freed, Sparta lost the labor base that sustained its system. Sparta's citizen body shrank. And the system became harder to sustain. Land and wealth concentrated, weakening the old ideal of equal citizen soldiers. Leuctra mattered because one defeat exposed a fragile citizen base and a system that could not easily replace losses. Later reformers tried to restore Sparta by force, law, and memory. Agis and Cleomenes show how Sparta's past became a weapon in reform politics. Under Rome, Sparta became a living museum of its own reputation. Ancient tourists came to see the legend performed. Most surviving accounts are written by outsiders, admirers, critics, or later moralists. Archaeology keeps correcting the simple story of a city with no art and no change. The Menelaean shows how heroic memory, cult, and landscape met near Sparta. The sanctuary at Amyclaeon reminds us that Spartan identity included deep ritual memory. The myth says Sparta was perfectly equal. The evidence shows hierarchy everywhere. The myth says Sparta was only war. The evidence shows ritual, families, craft, money, and politics. Sparta matters because it asks what a society will sacrifice to feel secure. Sparta's lesson is not that discipline always wins. It is that a society can become trapped by the very structure that made it famous. Modern culture often borrows Sparta's image while ignoring the people crushed beneath it. The strongest story is not the loudest legend. It is the one that survives contact with evidence. If Sparta's power depended on fear, discipline, and memory, which part truly outlived the city?